I had decided that I wouldn't cry when I talked about this, but that's already shot. I'm probably not going to make it through talking without about this without crying, and that's okay because I want to try to bring some humanity to this topic because I know it's going to be hard, y'all. Woo. I know that there are other people out there like me that are struggling right now. So that's why I'm speaking about this to help myself. And I'm speaking about this because I know there's somebody out there that's having the same experience I'm having. And as much as we're all sick of hearing about it, the main thing that I want to touch on is everything that's coming out and flooding out about the Epstein files. I'm not here to talk about them specifically. I'm not here to give any history or background on those. You can find that on the internet if you'd like. I'm here to talk about my human experience, and I'm sure someone else's human experience watching this unfold. And I know that there are like longtime conspiracy theorists out there that this is old news too. I know that. And I'm sorry to all of you that I doubted and I thought, that's crazy. Because now, unfortunately, we all know that you weren't crazy and you were correct. And that's a whole other topic. That's a whole other level of existential, like ontological shock and deconstruction that many of us are going through. But I had an interesting experience when it came out. So I found myself very caught up in the news about immigration and ICE and the things that this administration was doing and the horrors and atrocities of that, which are still ongoing. So, yeah. Other disclaimer, this is not a political channel. This is a human channel. And this is me talking about my experience. If you want to create more engagement for me by trolling in the comments, knock yourself out. But yeah, this isn't about politics or right and wrong. This is about the human experience and mental health. I was very much in the thick of being caught up with everything happening with ICE, and I still am, and being as involved as my capacity allows. I've been crying all morning, you guys, so this is just gonna be all like me sniffling in the mic. And then in the midst of being caught up in that and managing that and handling that and supporting my community through that, all of this stuff started, all of this infectious pus about the Epstein files started pouring out into the media, social media, collective consciousness. And I can speak for myself and many others that I think we're all in a collective freeze state at the moment. Like I said, people that have known about this stuff for a long time, you're probably not. You're probably like, oh, old news, cool. But for those of us who were not familiar with that information or we thought that information was crazy, for those of us whose human spirit still was not broken in that department, I think we're in a collective freeze state. I think that we were already in like a fight or flight feeling because of everything happening with ICE and not having a conclusion and just atrocities unfolding in front of our eyes. And I see a lot of comments a lot of times on social media saying we were not built to consume all of this. We were not built to know all of this. And sometimes I do agree with that, but also our world is full of this. And there's that tug and that push and pull of how much to look and how not to look away. And everyone has to decide their personal capacity for that. I do think that being misinformed and intentionally avoiding it is not okay. But I do think that you have to temper your personal consumption to what you can handle. And I want to explain more on that from my personal experience. So I was at a high level of consumption of the news and things like that with everything going on with ICE. And then this cyst of evil burst forth about the Epstein files. And I continued to consume it at a high level, along with everything else that I was consuming. And something started to happen to me. I knew that I was exhausted. I knew that I was worn out. I knew that my nervous system was on edge, as any normal human would be with everything that's been going on. But as I continued to consume the Epstein files, I entered a fairly deep state, no pun intended, of dissociation. And that's something I've experienced before. I think anyone that struggles with any type of mental health in their life knows what I'm talking about. Dissociation is a spectrum. It can be a mild way of life. There's years of my life that I've been dissociated. There's hindsight dissociation, where you erase things because of how they affected you. But what I experienced as a result of consuming information about the Epstein files kerfuffle was a deep sense of dissociation, and my emotions and my mind and my body fracturing away from themselves in order to digest what I was reading and understanding. That was extremely hard to weather. It's been many years since I've gone through something like that. And there's some takeaways from it. I worked with my therapist this morning. Thank goodness. Shout out to Lisa because she's awesome. And the different levels to it are, it's been many years since I've experienced something like that. So that's lovely, right? That means I really changed my life and I've done a lot of work, because I used to live in that state constantly. And that's been a graduated journey for me. When I was a child, I used to not have any memories from about 10 years old and below. I would have spotty ones or categorical ones or shared stories, but I didn't really have any active present memories. And I've healed and repaired a lot of that and uncovered and unrepressed a lot of those through years of therapy. But that was a profound sense of dissociation as a child. And I've experienced other periods of dissociation as a young adult, and then different layers and depths of it. And if you've ever experienced dissociation, you know that there are different layers of it. You could have a moment during your day where you're dissociated. You could have a section of years of your life where you're dissociated. But the level of dissociation that came on board for me when reading through these Epstein file things and consuming the news about it was profound. A profound level that I've not experienced in a very long time. And maybe in another video I can talk about other times I have experienced that profound level of dissociation and what I did about that and how I handled it. I'm happy to talk about that. And I want to bring more content about mental health to this channel in general, because that's really what I'm here to talk about. I want to talk about mental health. I want to talk about women. And that's where I want to get to. And it seems like there's no better time to talk about it than while we're all witnessing what we're witnessing. So I weathered through that dissociation. I realized that it was being driven and triggered by what I was consuming. I think everyone is horrified by what they're consuming and what we're learning and what we're seeing. Even if it's old news to you, you're probably still horrified. But the horror for me, I want to unpack why it was so horrific for me, because I know that there's somebody else out there that was impacted and is being impacted right now the way that I was. And I'm going to try and get through it. The reason that I dissociated so hard and experienced nervous system burnout and panic and disconnection from my body and reality in some brief moments is because I'm a victim of those same things in many ways. And I know that there are victims of these types of abuses that are consuming this right now, and it's everywhere. It's all they hear about. And I know that you are out there and that you're struggling. And I need you to pay attention to that and take care of yourself so you don't crash out. Because I had a little mentee bee. Over everything that we're consuming about this topic. And I'm sure someone else is out there too. What I would say to you if you're watching this video and you're consuming all of that and it's affecting you the way it affected me because you are also a victim of these types of systems and abuse, it is not happening right now. It is not happening right now. You are safe where you are at, and it's not happening right now. You are allowed to pay attention as much as you can, and you're also allowed to not pay attention if you need to. Create a safe space in your home and in your life and in your routines that you can operate in and be okay. And that's okay. There are other people who are not as affected, who are not victims of this type of abuse, who have not been victims of these types of systems, that are going to lead the charge when it comes to distribution, consumption, awareness. It doesn't have to be you. And that sounds like a crazy thing to say that's against the crowd when it comes to activism. But this is different. And that's my message to you if you're listening to this is it's okay to unplug and take care of yourself. And I did not catch that. So I'm hoping that by me sharing this that someone else can catch it. I have an issue with, and it's because of trauma, recognizing my emotions when they're happening. I typically recognize them on the back end in hindsight. And then I go, oh, that's what I was feeling. I am not so great. I'm getting better at recognizing it up front while it's happening, before it happens. I'm trying to move that cart to the front through therapy and awareness and feedback and knowing myself and different practices. So I am learning to do better at that. But on this one, I fumbled real bad. And I was consuming and not registering or noticing the effect it was having on me. And I crashed out. Pretty good. I told y'all I was going to be a mess. I was talking about this. Whew. Maybe I won't even post this. I don't know. I crashed out pretty hard. And in hindsight, when I got back to feeling stable and reconnected with myself, and I began to process and unpack, okay, whoa, what happened to me there? Why is this so difficult for me? With the assistance of my therapist, she was like, because you were abused by these same systems, because you are a assault victim. And I was like, yeah, duh. So it's amazing how clever our brains are that we just, I don't know, don't put that together. I felt like such a dork, such a stupid dork, because she was like, because you're the same as the people that experience this. You've been through the same thing. You have been abused by these same systems your whole life. And I was like, light bulb, duh. And so I think there's different degrees of people that are consuming this. I think there's people that are just like normal, regular people that are horrified and having a horrible time, and it's affecting them. It's affecting their nervous systems. And I feel like there's a different class of people that are consuming this. And that's who I'm speaking to. And that's people who have been oppressed, abused, held down by these types of systems, maybe these specific people even. And I was like, light bulb, I'm such an idiot that I didn't realize that. It was just such a clever mechanism in my brain that had, because I always say I have just profound amnesia about some of the things I've been through, which is my brain's little favor that it does for me because it loves me so much that it just deletes things. So typically for me, I don't know if this is the case for anyone else, when I experience stress or fight or flight or anything like that, it stays in an aloof space for me. I have a really nice like parachute, like ripcord button that keeps emotions at bay. And then they enter through my body. I experience them physically. And then I experience them emotionally when my body has crashed out. And that does a lovely dance with my chronic illness issues. You see there. So that's the map that I have discovered for how my brain and body operate when I experience stress. So I'm trying to move pain, stress, grief, whatever adverse emotion you want to pick. I'm trying to learn to experience it at least cerebrally or emotionally first and let it flow through my body. And I'm trying to change that flow. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on in therapy, and it's been a very long journey, and it is getting there, but I fudged up real hardcore when consuming the Epstein files. I've been crying all day, you guys, because it just didn't register. I just didn't register how it was going to affect me. And so I definitely had to turn everything off for a while. And I had to pare down my life and take care of my body and things like that. So the reason that the Epstein files were so profound for me is not because I am a victim of trafficking. It's not because I'm a victim of grooming in any sense of what you're reading or seeing in those files and that information, but because I've experienced the same thing through different systems. The same system that has executed these atrocities and currently upholds these atrocities is the system that I was raised in. Conservatism, organized religion, typically, republicanism, nationalism, white supremacy, patriarchy. These systems, when I was growing up, were so potent and so powerful and so oppressive in my life, in the cult-like, evangelical, white, nationalist environment that I was brought up in, that I have experienced extreme trauma seeing this administration take hold. And now there's something about the Epstein files that's taken that to a whole new height. For me, it feels like in a movie where you watch this whole movie and the character in the movie goes through their struggles to fight off this boss or this villain, and the movie ends and you're like, happy ending. They got free. The good guy won. And then there's a sequel to the movie and the villain is back. He didn't actually die. He's not actually gone. And here he comes again. That's the best way to describe what it feels like watching this administration take hold in the country I grew up in, flawed as it is. So flawed. And then everything coming out about the Epstein files is just, yeah. To put it more poignantly, it feels like the happy ending of escaping those environments and those types of abuse. Like that ending is being taken away and rewritten. And I know for a fact that there's victims of these types of systems out there that feel the same way. And I have to pause, straight, like full stop, e-brake real quick, and acknowledge that Black and brown populations of people have known this the whole time and have been experiencing this the whole time. So that's just a little dollop of icing on the cake when I'm processing my own emotions. I feel this profound shock and guilt and just like mind blownness that this is a Tuesday for Black and brown people. Everything we're watching happen with ICE has been executed via police brutality and white supremacy for generations. The feeling we have of realizing that the people in power are infiltrated by profound and almost bottomless corruption, that's a familiar feeling for Black and brown people. That is nothing new. And so that's just the little sprinkle of powdered sugar on top of the brownie that my experience, it's even that bigger shockwave of, wow. So I just have to pause and say that as well, because my experience is not unique and pales in comparison to those who have been experiencing this for generations. But it is still valid, and I know that there's someone out there that's feeling what I'm feeling. The same people that are involved in the corruption that's being uncovered right now are the same people that are running the administration right now. And those same people are the same people that built and protected the systems that I grew up in and literally ran away from. I think that parallel, that globalization of realizing that all of these parties are the same, is the real kicker. And I know Rage Against the Machine, their famous line, the same people that burn crosses are the same people that hold office. Pretty sure that's it, right? There's never been a more accurate statement. I knew there was corruption, and I knew there was pedophilia, and I knew there was abuse. And I know like white supremacy and conservatism and Christianity and all. I know that world inside out. But I will lay myself out and say, I did not know. But then again, I did. I did because I experienced it. I ran away from it. So the mirroring that my therapist pointed out to me was that the feeling I was experiencing during my little mentee B from consuming the Epstein files is the same feeling I experienced as a young child when I realized this is so huge and this is so all consuming and this is so pervasive and this is so heinous that it's almost too big for a human spirit, if you still have yours intact, to take in. Like it doesn't fit. It can't, my spirit and my mind and my soul can't take in. It doesn't fit inside the shell of who I am. And so it's just this massive festering bolus of information that is true. We know it's true. It's undeniable now. And again, I'm not here to debate the nuances or the depth of this rabbit hole. I have no interest in staring into the endless void of how deep this goes. I don't want to know. I know everything I need to know. I'm not going to turn a blind eye. I want to stay informed. I want to follow the stories of the victims. I want to see if there will be justice for these types of things. But I don't think that's the most profound thing here, actually. I think the most profound thing here is the effect that it's having on those of us who are coming to understand this information. And I think what we can't do right now is judge one another for how much we're able to consume, because you have no clue what someone's been through. And trust me, I'm the first one to be like, guys, don't look away, because I do feel that way. But at the same time, two things can be true at once. I also hold space for the fact that some people might need to look away for a minute. If you are a parent right now, I know what you're feeling. As for me and my story, I was raised by these same people. Not in name, but in system. I was raised by these same people. I was raised in the church. I was raised in conservatism. I was raised in republicanism, obviously, which meant something different back then, but same beast, different suit. I was raised in sweep under the rug. That's how I was raised. I was raised in the type of establishments that when abuse happened, when trafficking happened, when assault happened, when happened, you were quiet. I was raised that you don't go to the police, you go to the church elders. I was raised that you hug that man anyway, because it's rude if you don't. I was raised in an era where we would rather save face than be rude and call someone out. I think women at large are having a very difficult time consuming what's coming out. I think it is the responsibility of men to read and consume and understand what their counterparts have perpetrated. I think that all at once I felt the collective rage and shame and silence and pain of every woman that has come before me that has had to keep their mouth shut about things like this, that has not filed that police report, felt it all at once. And so I do agree with that sentiment sometimes, that maybe we aren't meant to feel all of that at once, because it's unthinkable. It's insanity. So please care for yourself in whatever way you need to care for yourself right now. When I was 18 years old, I worked in an establishment that was the dictionary definition of misogyny, the restaurant industry. And my restaurant in particular, for various reasons that I will leave out here, was a heightened version of that. I knew that to get a job, I had to appear a certain way. I knew that I was given my job at said restaurant because of my appearance. And it was an unspoken understanding that it was my job to be the recipient of that type of attention and abuse that I know now was abuse, was part of my job description. I happened to be a hostess at that time. So if you've worked in the industry, you already know. It was my job to look right at work, that middle-aged men would come in to have dinner with their wives, and while their wives were in the bathroom, they were grabbing my ass and tipping me to be quiet about it. That was a regular occurrence, and I could go on and on about that type of behavior. And I was raised and convinced that was normal. Through those types of dynamics and understanding and pressures, I was a prime target for my assault and experience while working there, where ultimately a manager of mine looked into my files of where I lived that were on file with the restaurant, broke into my home, and assaulted me for hours, by the way. I'm not going to go into the full story here because I don't want to re-traumatize anyone. But I know that my story about that is regular news to women. And that fact is insane. So when the Epstein files are pouring out, my body has registered the traumas that I have been through, the systems that I grew up in, my experience that I mentioned, and many other experiences, along with the collective burden of being a woman. When the Epstein files are rolling out and I'm consuming it and it's hitting me, it's dinging that bell in my body and my psyche and my consciousness and my spirit. And that violent ringing is what has caused me to experience so much distress to the point of kind of crashing out. I cannot even describe to you the immeasurable level of grief I feel. It's so big that it's inaccessible to me at this time, and I'm trying to microdose my feelings. I cannot explain how huge that feeling of grief is to see these institutions not only be back in power, but to be abusing and terrorizing my brothers and sisters all over this country, friends of mine, to seem immune, to have immunity to any type of justice, retribution, checks and balances, to have a bulletproof vest on to the rule of law. And I know that this feeling I'm having is not new. I know it isn't. I know that. But that bell is ringing inside of me because of my personal experiences. And we all feel things based on our personal experiences. That's just how humans work. You feel what you're informed about. So I cannot even express the unfathomable amount of grief and pain and shock and confusion and trauma and devastation that people like me are feeling as we're seeing all of this information come out. And we need to take care of each other right now as women. I don't want to rage about the news. I want to know how you're doing with it. How are you handling? How are you coping with what you're seeing right now? And if you need to switch up your algorithm and you need to unfollow some news accounts and you need to unplug for a while, do that, please. Because if you don't, the next stop, the next train station that you will arrive at is hopelessness. And to be completely honest and vulnerable with you, that's where I'm at right now. Unless some people end up in handcuffs or a you know what that starts with a G, a French little contraption. Unless that starts happening, my next train station is hopelessness.